My boyfriend's obsession was having a kid, but he was infertile, so he tricked his identical twin into getting me pregnant. That night, I gave myself completely to Rocco, fully aware he wasn't Renzo. The next morning, I complimented my real boyfriend. "Babe, you were amazing last night." I've never felt that satisfied before. His face drained of color like I'd slapped him. Behind that frozen expression, I saw a flicker of something. Guilt? Fear? Jealousy? Who do you like better? Your boyfriend in bed last night, or the one making you breakfast right now? I wrapped my arms around his and smiled like a love-struck newlywed. "I love how gentle you are in the daylight. But last night," I giggled, "I really liked that wild version of you." At the breakfast table, Renzo looked oddly brightened as he turned to the man sitting beside him. "Bro, Susie made this coffee herself. You should really try it." As he spoke, he pushed a steaming cup toward his older brother, who had just returned from Norway. Across the table, I looked up at Rocco. He was dressed in a black business suit, hair still slightly damp from a morning shower. The crystal chandelier above the dining room cast a soft glow over him, making his features more defined. Handsome didn't even begin to cover it. He didn't say a word. His lips pressed into a line, his blue eyes unreadable. And just like that, everything came rushing back. I had been reborn. In my previous life, Renzo had drugged his brother and tricked him into sleeping with me. He was desperate for me to get pregnant. All because he couldn't have kids himself. He needed the baby to win his grandfather's favor and secure his share of the inheritance.
And it worked.
After I got pregnant, he used the child to get 60% of the PWL Corporation shares. But once he had what he wanted, he locked me in a basement and tormented me day after day, like I was useless. I never understood why, until the day his mistress threw acid in my face and spat out the truth. The baby wasn't his. It was his brother's. To him, I was ruined. A walking stain on his perfect image. Just like me, our child was a disgrace. Renzo couldn't stand the sight of us. In the end, I set that basement on fire, trapping him and his mistress in the flames. Renzo, his mistress, and I, none of us made it out alive. Back at the table, Renzo's voice broke through my thoughts. "Come on, bro.
Take a sip.
Don't let Susie's effort go to waste." I looked at his overly eager face and suddenly felt sick to my stomach. That coffee. I obviously made it for him. But here he was acting like it was some kind of offering for another guy. In my past life, I thought the brothers were just close. Now I could see it for what it really was. A setup. One piece in a bigger plan. Really? If she made it herself, Rocco said after a beat, his eyes locked on mine. How could I say no? He picked up the cup and took a sip. That was when another memory came flooding back. I was back in the fire. The smoke, the heat, the pain, and him, tearing through the flames to get to me. He'd held me tightly, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Susie, Susie,
Hang on.
I'm here. I'll get you out." But the fire was too strong. None of us made it. At the very end, when the smoke and heat had nearly taken everything, he was still holding me, his arms wrapped around me as he leaned in close and murmured against my cheek. "Susie, I love you." Back in the present, I didn't cling to Renzo like I had in my last life. Instead, I turned to Rocco with a warm smile and said softly, "If you like it, I can make one more cup for you." As soon as I offered that, both guys turned their heads to look at me. Rocco didn't react much, but Renzo's expression twitched for a second, like something about my words caught him off guard. Still, he said nothing, just pressed his lips together and stayed quiet. That night, as I passed by the study after my shower, I noticed a soft light leaking through the cracked door. Inside, Sierra Illich, Renzo's childhood sweetheart, was perched on his desk, tugging playfully at his tie. "Renzo," she said with a teasing smirk, "are you seriously gonna let your brother sleep with Susie?" She let go of the tie and tilted her head. "I mean, I remember how hard you chased after her back then. It hasn't been that long. You really don't mind just handing her over?" Renzo grabbed her waist and leaned in to kiss her. His lips landed right on her bright red mouth. "You gotta give something up to catch the big prize," he said against her mouth. "I've always been second to my brother. If I don't beat him to it, get a kid first, and let Grandpa hold a great-grandchild, then I'll never matter in his eyes." "And anyway," Renzo said with a smug grin, "I've already had a taste of Susie. Honestly, nothing special. Just average. You, though." His finger slid down Sierra's collarbone. "You're spicy. You give me the thrill." Laughter erupted between them, low and dirty. The two practically melted into each other, tangled up in kisses. I stood frozen just outside the room, fists clenched tight at my sides. But I held it down. Going off on him now would be like throwing myself at a brick wall. It would only hurt me. The Powells were one of the most powerful families in Manchester. And me? I was just a broke college student in my 3rd year. Just a nobody. If Renzo wanted to get rid of me, he could do it as easily as stepping on a bug. I knew that because he'd already done it once. In my last life, I tried everything, ran away, begged for help, even called the cops. But nothing worked. I was always dragged right back to him. So this time, I kept my head down, pressed my back to the wall, and crept down the hallway, back to the bedroom. My feet barely made a sound against the floor. When I slipped into the room, I could still hear the faint sound of their moaning behind me. My chest tightened. Renzo had known I was in the shower. And still, he brought Sierra into the study and did that with her. That alone showed he didn't see me as his girlfriend. Not even close. Lying on the bed, I could almost feel the heat of that fire from my past life crawling at my skin again. The agony, the helplessness, the hatred, it came rushing back. I swallowed hard, shoved the memories down, and grabbed the blow dryer. After drying my hair, I climbed into bed and turned on my side. My fingers curled into the blanket, my eyes wide open in the dark. My jaw tightened. I wasn't going to let this life go the same way. I'd find a way out, whatever it took. Minutes passed. Then I heard footsteps stumbling in the hallway, slow and heavy. Hey, wrong room, bro. It's this one, Renzo's voice said with a laugh. Soon, the door creaked open. I kept my back to the door, pretending to sleep, even as I heard Renzo guide a clearly drunk Rocco into the room. The door creaked open. Footsteps stopped just inside. There was a pause, long enough to make my skin crawl, then the sound of Renzo's low, satisfied exhale. I didn't need to see his face to know he was pleased. Maybe it was the empty glass on the nightstand, or the sight of me curled tightly under the blanket, playing my part. Then came his voice, smug and casual. This is your room, bro. Now, get some sleep. I felt the mattress shift as Rocco dropped down beside me. A clean, bitter orange scent filled the air, his cologne, faint and unfamiliar. The door clicked shut behind Renzo as he left, careful not to make a sound. But the next second, something was off. The man beside me suddenly sat upright. His back was straight, his eyes fixed on the ceiling like he was wide awake. My eyes narrowed. Didn't he drink the whole cup of coffee? Shouldn't he be knocked out by now? That thought startled me, so I sat up like he'd woken me. Renzo. I mumbled sleepily, rubbing my eyes. Why'd you come in so late? Rocco turned his head slowly to look at me. Moonlight filtered through the window, lighting up his face. His eyes were cold, sharp, and something else I couldn't quite place. I scooted closer and wrapped my arms around him. You weren't here, and I got scared. I had this horrible nightmare, I said softly, pressing my cheek to his shoulder. He stiffened in my embrace but didn't move away. I watched his face carefully. He didn't look dazed or drugged at all. So he was faking it? He knew what was going on. Then why go along with it? I contemplated. Does he actually like me? Besides, back in my last life, he died with me. Voluntarily. I couldn't be sure what he felt now, but I knew one thing. I had to hold on to whatever this was. It might be the only shot I had at surviving. Leaning in, I brushed my lips against the corner of his mouth. Renzo, I want you, I whispered. I caught his eyes flickering. Then he grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. What did you just call me? I blinked my round almond-shaped eyes, pretending not to understand. What? I called you. Renzo. His brows drew together. Call me babe, he said. I froze. What? I could barely control my face. He reached for me again, almost like he was angry. One hand wrapped around my waist and yanked me down. His fingers hinted at the buttons of my pajamas, pepping them open. I still had no idea why he'd fallen for me in our past life. But the fact that he took the coffee without any reaction this time, that alone told me things were already playing out differently. Unless he's been reborn too? The thought popped into my head out of nowhere, and before I could fully process it, Rocco had already hit his limit. His jaw was clenched so tight, I could imagine the veins on his forehead bulging. His eyes were bloodshot, blazing red with desire. But even then, there was still a trace of clarity in his gaze. He was fighting it. He ground his teeth and looked at me. Susie, actually. I'm. And right then I knew. He really had been reborn. Perfect. That'll make my revenge so much easier. So, I didn't let him finish. Instead, I slipped my arms around his neck and kissed him first. Whatever self-control he had left vanished instantly. He kissed me back, hard, wild, fevered, and utterly dominant. Again and again and again. The last round ended in the bathroom, with my back against the wall. He had one hand under my thighs, holding me up, and I had both arms wrapped tightly around his waist. But the bastard was teasing me, on purpose, not going in. I let out a frustrated breath, leaned in, and gave his Adam's apple a playful but urgent bite. Come on already. He let out a quiet chuckle, his voice husky as he slid a hand up the back of my head. Say it again. Renzo. Wrong name. Just like that, he thrust into me, hard. Like punishment. My whole body curled into his as a tremble shot through me. Call me babe, he growled low in my ear, his voice rough and magnetic, like it was pulling me under. I bit down on the back of my hand and whimpered. Babe, babe, babe. The third time I said it, something in him snapped. He lost control completely.
He moved like a man possessed.
My body went soft in his arms, like a fish out of water, lips parted, gasping, barely able to breathe. By the time I woke up, it was still dark out. But Rocco, he was already gone. I slipped on my pajama robe and padded out of the bedroom quietly. Sure enough, there was light coming from the study. I leaned against the wall and peeked through the crack of the door. Rocco was lounging lazily on the couch in the sitting area while Renzo stood across from him, fuming. Bro, how the hell could you go into the wrong room? He was livid, face flushed, voice shaking. Do you have any idea? Susie is the woman I love most in this world. Rocco just crossed his legs, lit a cigarette, and gave him a slow sideways glance. Really? I had no idea. He blew out a lazy puff of smoke before adding, Didn't you just sneak out of the guest bedroom downstairs? Out of Sierra's bed. Renzo flared up instantly. That was her. Sierra tempted me. Rocco gave a cold laugh. Too late for excuses. So, what do you want now? Renzo's tone shifted immediately. He stole a glance at his brother's face and changed tactics. I mean, it's just a woman, right? No big deal. If you like her, I don't mind stepping back for a bit. You can play around with her. But, he added casually like he hadn't just called me a toy, you know that Project Shoreline, Grandpa gave it to you the moment you came back. I've been managing it all this time. I'd really like to keep it. Rocco smirked, like he'd been waiting for him to say that. Sure, he said easily. I'll talk to Grandpa tomorrow. Tell him you'll stay in charge of that project. He paused, his tone light but sharp. Just remember, you take full responsibility. Profit or loss, it's all on you. Renzo agreed immediately. He looked like he'd just won the lottery. As soon as Rocco stood up, I turned around and dashed back to the bedroom. I dove under the covers, shut my eyes, and pretended to be fast asleep. The next time I woke up, it was already noon. Still in my camisole, I made my way downstairs. The moment I reached the corner, I spotted Renzo sitting at the dining table. My footsteps froze. I stared hard at the back of his head, unable to look away. Almost like he could feel it, he turned and looked straight at me. He frowned, looking a little irritated. You just woke up? It's lunchtime already. I took a breath, settled my expression, and walked down the stairs slowly, my steps graceful and unhurried. Once I reached him, I sat down beside him and shot him a playful look, my tone half teasing, half accusing. Well, whose fault do you think it is? You were so wild last night, my body couldn't handle it. His hand froze mid-slice. The knife scraped across the plate with a loud screech, metal against porcelain. It was sharp, grating, just like the tension that suddenly filled the room. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Renzo? What's wrong? His gaze dropped immediately to the red marks scattered along my collarbone and chest, obvious signs left behind from last night. I let my cheeks flush like I was shy about it, but I couldn't resist smiling just a little. Still, I kept up the act and praised him sweetly. You were amazing last night, babe. Seriously, I've never felt that satisfied before. Right then, I caught his breath hitch, just for a second, and saw his hand curl into a tight fist under the table. His voice came out low and cold, laced with something sharp. Never before?
Crap.
I blinked and quickly clapped a hand over my mouth, as if realizing I'd slipped. But then I leaned toward him with a teasing smile and gave him a playful wink. Oops, did I say that out loud? I mean, you've always been amazing, of course. Renzo stiffened. His face darkened instantly, turning the color of burned toast. I pretended not to notice and looked at him with wide-eyed admiration. But last night?
Wow.
You were especially incredible. He stared at me blankly, like his brain had suddenly shut down. He didn't even blink. So I stood up and stepped behind him, wrapping my arms gently around his shoulders. Leaning in close, I whispered against his ear, soft and full of fake shyness. You really don't know how to hold back, do you? I let out a little laugh before adding. The bathroom was one thing, but the windowsill?
What if someone saw us?
I would have died of embarrassment. He gritted his teeth, jaw clenched so hard the muscles were twitching. A long, tense silence followed before he finally grabbed my wrists and shoved me gently back into my seat. Just eat your damn breakfast. I smiled sweetly and picked up my knife and fork like a well-behaved little wife. But I could hear the way his breathing grew more and more uneven, like he was fighting to stay calm. Then, out of nowhere, he slammed his utensils down. The sharp clatter broke the silence. He pushed back his chair with a screech and stood up abruptly. I've got stuff to do. I'm heading out. I gave him a bright, understanding smile and nodded. Okay. Oh, and if you pass by that bakery, bring me back one of those strawberry cupcakes I love. His fists clenched at his sides again, and his voice came out low and tight.
Yeah.
I know. Since it was summer break, I didn't have to worry about school. After finishing my meal, I brought my laptop into the garden room, nestled among the flowers and warm sunlight. I spent the afternoon online, looking up a few things and ordering a couple of items. By the time I closed my laptop, the sky outside had turned golden pink with sunset, and the air inside was thick with the scent of blooming flowers. I stretched lazily and let out a deep sigh. Honestly, rich people really do know how to enjoy life. Right then, a tall shadow fell over me. Someone leaned in, plucked the frameless glasses off my nose, and held them casually in his fingers. Startled, I looked up. For a moment, I couldn't tell if it was Renzo or Rocco. The two of them looked ridiculously alike. But after last night's madness, I'd figured out their differences, tiny details but enough. Rocco had a birthmark at the outer corner of his eye, like a teardrop, no bigger than a pinhead. It was barely visible unless you were up close. And he had a faded pale scar across his chest, the kind that looked like it had been there for years. Want some? He asked casually, holding up a small box with strawberry cupcakes inside. That snapped me out of it immediately. Grinning, I jumped up and wrapped my arms around his, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Thank you, Renzo. Without missing a beat, I opened the box, scooped up some of the strawberry jam with my finger, and held it up to his lips. Here, try it. It's really good. His eyes flickered, and I saw his throat move as he swallowed. Then, without a word, he opened his mouth and took my whole fingertip in, his lips warm and soft around it. Just then, a furious voice exploded from the doorway. What the hell are you two doing? I jerked back in a panic and turned to look. There stood Renzo. Without hesitation, he stormed over, grabbed my wrist, and yanked me behind him, shielding me with his body. Bro, he said coldly, Susie is my girlfriend. Only then did I notice. He was holding a strawberry-flavored cupcake in his hand, too. I instantly tugged at his sleeve, flustered. I'm so sorry, Renzo, I said in a rush, my voice trembling. I thought he was you. I thought. As I spoke, my eyes flicked to the half-eaten cupcake Rocco had brought. It was already unwrapped. The more I explained, the more ashamed I felt. I dropped my gaze, head down, face filled with guilt. Don't blame her. Rocco spoke up, his tone detached. He shot me a glance before adding, she just fed me a bit of strawberry jam, that's all. Renzo pressed his lips into a tight line. After a second, his expression softened a little. All right, he muttered. I overreacted. As soon as Rocco walked out, Renzo turned, strode to the trash can, and tossed the cupcake his brother had brought straight in. Then he spun back toward me, shoved me gently against the wall, and leaned in close. From now on, he warned, his voice low and possessive, don't eat anything my brother gives you. If you do, I'll get jealous. I nearly laughed out loud. This man was the one who planned for me to sleep with his brother. He set it up. And now he's acting all territorial, like some overprotective lover? Who's he trying to fool? Besides, wasn't he in bed with Sierra just last night? Where the hell did this stupid possessiveness even come from? But I kept those thoughts to myself and forced a gentle, obedient smile. Oh, Okay, I murmured, nodding sweetly. He stared at me for a long moment, clearly caught up in the act. Maybe he thought I looked extra cute like that, all docile and compliant, because suddenly, he leaned down, trying to kiss me. I could only clench my fist. Ever since I found out how much of an asshole he really was, every time he got near me, I felt physically sick. And this time was no different. The nausea hit hard. I slapped a hand over my mouth and dashed straight to the bathroom, barely making it before I gagged. Honestly, I thought he'd be pissed. But to my surprise, when I came back out, he was in a weirdly good mood. He gently pulled me down beside him, acting all thoughtful. Still not feeling well? He asked, tucking my hair behind my ear. I caught the gleam in his eyes, the kind of excitement that made my stomach twist. I almost laughed. He was so desperate, he'd forgotten something as basic as human biology. I'm fine, I said quickly, faking a sheepish smile. It's probably just my stomach acting up. He seemed to catch on. His face fell a little, and he looked at me in disappointment. Wait, he said. Your ovulation date is around the 7th, right? I pretended not to understand and nodded. Then I added with a warning smile, I'm telling you now, I'm still in college. I'm not planning on having kids anytime soon. But instead of backing off, he held my hand tighter, pressing it between his palms, his voice low and firm. But if something does happen, if there's an accident, it'd be best if you keep it. He was always like this, pushy, controlling, never giving me a chance to say no. Just like back when he first started pursuing me. I hadn't wanted to agree to date him at all. But then his people grabbed me and dragged me to the rooftop. They said if I didn't say yes, they'd throw me off. And I knew they weren't bluffing. After all, the entire school had been funded by his family. If I died, they'd just say I jumped. At most, they'd pay my parents a bit of hush money. To him, that wouldn't even count as spare change. But to me, it would have been the end of everything. So I had no choice. I leaned into him, played my part, and asked softly, if I did get pregnant, would you marry me? He blinked, caught off guard for a second, but then quickly nodded. Of course, he answered. I'd marry you. You're the only one I'd ever marry. And he meant it. He really would marry me. But he wouldn't be able to let it go. He'd never forgive me. He'd bury all that rage and resentment deep inside and take it out on me day after day. Too bad. This time around, I'm not going to give him the chance. Later that night, it felt like he was in a rush to prove something to me. I had just come out of the shower, still drying my hair, when he suddenly pushed me down on the bed. His body was already burning hot, breath coming hard, eyes wild with need. Susie, he whispered hoarsely, let's make love again. You tell me if I am better tonight or last night, HM? My heart instantly clenched tight in my chest. Something felt seriously off. That gut-deep kind of bad. Renzo rolled off me and started taking off his clothes. My heart shot straight up to my throat as I watched him strip down, fast. He was just about to unbuckle his belt when 3 knocks came from the door. Renzo? Why'd you leave your phone in the study? Grandpa's calling. Pick it up now. As Rocco's steady voice came through the door, Renzo's face instantly darkened with frustration. Still holding the blanket up to my chest, I looked at him and sighed. Go on. If it's Grandpa, it's probably important. He hesitated for a second, then pulled his clothes back on. As he leaned over, he pressed a kiss to my cheek. Wait for me, he murmured, then turned and walked out. The moment the door clicked shut, I let out a huge breath of relief. Right then, a notification popped up on my phone, a shipping update. The stuff I'd ordered that afternoon had already been sent out under a private listing. I hurried to delete the purchase record and tracking details. I was just about to lock my phone when a new Facebook friend request popped up.
Hey.
It's me, Rocco. 4 words. Simple like him. I hit accept without hesitation and quickly messaged him. Hey bro. I waited a bit, hoping for a reply. But nothing came. Eventually, I dozed off without even realizing it. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the maids chatting in the hallway. Apparently, Renzo had been called back to the old estate in the middle of the night. Something about a serious incident in the project he was in charge of. Acting like it didn't concern me, I casually ran my fingers through my hair as I made my way downstairs at a leisurely pace. At the head of the dining table sat Rocco. In front of him was a plate with a neatly toasted slice of bread, a steaming mug of black coffee, and today's financial newspaper folded crisply at the edge. Morning, bruh. I greeted casually, sliding into the seat to his left like it was routine. He glanced up from his paper, eyes sharp but lazy, landing briefly on my lips, still soft and full, probably still slightly red from last night. He took a sip of his coffee, his Adam's apple shifting subtly as he swallowed. Then, like it was nothing, he asked, "School's on break, right? Got any plans today?" I smiled, relaxing a bit. "Meeting up with some girlfriends to go shopping." "I'll go with you," he said casually. Caught off guard, I blinked. "No need. You're super busy, bruh. I can just have the driver take me." But he waved that off without missing a beat. It's settled. And just like that, there was no room for argument. In the car, the driver, sharp as ever, raised the partition without being asked. Rocco rested his laptop on his lap, his long fingers flying smoothly across the keyboard. Even while working, he still had the bandwidth to talk. Without even looking up, he asked, "How long have you and Renzo been seeing each other?" I froze for a second. It took me a moment to realize he was talking to me. A year," I said slowly. For some reason, talking to him always made me a little tense, especially when my eyes drifted down to his hands. Those nimble fingers, I couldn't help but remember that night. The way those hands had run wild all over me. "Only a year, huh?" he muttered, as if to himself. No wonder.
Huh?
No wonder?
What does he mean by that?
No wonder I hadn't recognized him that night. If so, that means he still doesn't know I've been reborn. And until I figure out exactly where I stand with him, there's no way I'll let that secret slip. Still playing dumb, I tilted my head toward him. "What do you mean, bruh?" At that, he finally shut the laptop and turned to face me. His eyes were deep-set and blue as the ocean. And when he looked at me, really looked, it felt like I could drown in his gaze. "You really like Renzo, don't you?" I blurted it out without thinking, but the moment the words left my mouth, the atmosphere inside the car instantly shifted. Even though Rocco's face didn't change much, the pressure in the air suddenly dropped, heavy and stifling. Just when I started to overthink if I'd said something wrong, he abruptly looked away like he hadn't heard a thing. Then, without even glancing at me, he casually tossed a jewelry box into my lap.
"Here.
For you. You've been with us in the estate for a while now, and I haven't given you a proper welcome gift." I opened the box and froze. Inside was an emerald ring. Not just any ring. It was one of a pair, passed down by his grandmother when she was still alive, meant for her 2 future granddaughters-in-law. In my past life, I wore the exact same one on my wedding day with Renzo. So now, why is Rocco giving me something so valuable? What's he trying to do, test me? Back in this timeline, Renzo hadn't proposed yet, and I had no idea this ring was a family heirloom. I immediately shoved the box back toward Rocco. "Bruh, this is way too expensive. I can't accept it." But he didn't take it. Instead, he lazily lifted his eyelids and locked eyes with me, his gaze sharp and unreadable. "Oh yeah," he said coolly. "Then tell me, what makes it so expensive?" "I mean, just look at it. It looks super valuable," I fumbled, throwing out the first excuse that came to mind. He let out a short laugh, low and effortless. "What's the most it could be worth?" 10 million max. "You're worth it." I opened my mouth, but for a second, nothing came out. I had no idea how to respond to that. Before I could gather my thoughts, he suddenly leaned in close, his face just inches from mine. His voice dropped, steady and low. "When I say something, I mean it." The way he looked at me, it made my heart skip. But before I could read too much into it, he pulled back just as quickly and sat up straight again like nothing had happened. Then he opened his laptop and started typing, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on me. A while later, the car rolled to a stop in front of a cafe. I stepped out and turned back toward him. "Thanks, bruh," I said sincerely. He just gave a simple, I stood on the curb, watching as the car window rolled up and the vehicle slowly pulled away from view. Then I turned on my heel and headed across the street, into another quiet little cafe. Inside one of the private booths, well hidden from view, I pulled out a thick stack of cash and handed it over to a bald man wearing sunglasses. In exchange, he passed me a tightly wrapped package in a brown paper bag. Neither of us said a word. Just a clean, silent deal. Money for goods. Later that evening, once I got home, my phone rang. It was Renzo. "There's a small issue with the Project Shoreline," he said. "I've got to fly over and take care of it." Then, after a pause, he added, "But don't worry, I'll definitely make it back before your ovulation window. Promise." I hung up the phone feeling weirdly great. With him gone, things were going to be a lot easier for me moving forward. Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, the day I'd been waiting for finally came. My ovulation day. Renzo messaged me, saying he was flying back and told me to wait for him. But instead of him, someone else showed up, Sierra. The Ilichas had distant ties with the Powells. She called Renzo's mom her aunt, so she treated the Powells' estate like her own place. So honestly, I wasn't surprised when she cornered me in the garden room. With her arms crossed, she stared at my stomach for a long time, her expression ice cold. Then she tossed a paper bag at me. Renzo told me to make sure you wear this after your shower, she said flatly. I peeked inside, and immediately regretted it. It was a barely there lace nightie, and to make it worse, there were catters stuffed in the bottom of the bag. When's he getting back? I asked, trying not to sound as annoyed as I felt. Sierra gave a mocking little smirk. What's the rush? He'll be back tonight. Then she turned around and walked off, still hugging her arms. Honestly, I was starting to feel a little anxious. But then, the door swung open, and in walked Rocco. He stood tall and composed, with long limbs and a calm, commanding presence. The red birthmark at the corner of his eye was faint, but impossible to ignore. At that moment, my clenched fists relaxed. I knew it. There was no way Renzo would let an opportunity like this slip by. Renzo was way too eager to beat his older brother and take over as the family's heir. That night, Rocco showed up in a clean white loungewear set, smelling faintly of something bitter and citrusy, like orange peel. My lips, previously set in a pout, curled into a sweet smile. Without thinking, I ran up and wrapped my arms around his waist, resting my cheek against his chest. In a soft, almost whiny tone, I muttered, "You came back this late, after texting me super early? Do you have any idea how long I waited?" I was wearing the black lace camisole Renzo picked out for me, and those ridiculous cat ears. Rocco's breath hitched. His hands landed on my shoulders, palms burning hot. I rose on tiptoe, leaned in close to his ear, and whispered, "Renzo, you don't like it?" His eyes flickered. For a second, he looked shaken. Then his gaze narrowed slightly. "What did you just call me?" I blinked, caught off guard for a beat. Then I giggled, stuck out my tongue, and said teasingly, "Oops, babe." Before I could react, he grabbed my cheeks and kissed me. The next 7 days? A total blur. Aside from eating and sleeping, we were practically glued to each other. At one point, I looked at him and asked, "Why have you been so intense lately?" Rocco paused, then tilted his head slightly. "You tell me. Why do you think?" I was barefoot in the courtyard, wearing a white dress and walking backwards across the grass, hands tucked behind my back. "I think it's 'cause you're really in love with me," I said with a grin. He let out a soft laugh. "You're not wrong." The truth? I still didn't know why he'd fallen for me. We'd been testing each other since the beginning, constantly feeling each other out. Then, about a month later, Renzo came back. He looked totally wrecked, standing there in front of me dusty, exhausted, like he'd just rushed in from a long trip. I blinked at him. "Didn't you just leave for the office earlier? Why'd you turn around all of a sudden? And you even changed clothes?" He was fuming, his jaw tight, eyes blazing like he was about to explode. But before he could speak, Rocco's car pulled into the driveway. "Renzo, come upstairs with me." Rocco didn't wait for a response. He slammed the car door shut and headed straight for the second-floor study. Renzo clenched his jaw, gave me a long look, and followed. Naturally, I crept after them and pressed my ear to the door. No luck. It was shut tight. I couldn't hear a thing. Still, I wasn't worried. I had backups. By the time the brothers came back down, it was already dark. Renzo's face was stiff, unreadable, and deeply pissed. Dinner was laid out. They sat across from each other, silent. Renzo didn't say much, but he looked troubled, and he kept glancing at me with a weird, almost tortured expression. Trying to break the tension, I leaned over and served him his favorite, pan-seared short ribs. "Try this, it's MMPH." But the smell hit me too fast. Instead of making me hungry, my stomach twisted violently. A wave of nausea rolled through me, chest tight and burning. I dropped the fork, slapped a hand over my mouth, and bolted to the bathroom. I didn't need to see it to know they both stood up behind me at the same time. By the time I came back out, pale and shaky, Rocco was waiting with a tissue in hand. "Thanks, bruh," I whispered, accepting it with a grateful smile. "What's wrong with you?" Renzo asked sharply, eyes narrowed. He didn't even seem to notice how harsh his tone was. I looked up at him, then quickly dropped my gaze, cheeks flushed pink like a shy girl. "I went to the hospital yesterday. The doctor said I'm pregnant. Renzo staggered back a step, caught completely off guard. But there wasn't even a flicker of joy on his face. Instead, he looked like the floor had just crumbled beneath him. Right then, Rocco's eyes lit up. There was something in his expression, like he wanted to speak, but stopped himself. Meanwhile, I gently tugged on Renzo's sleeve, watching his stunned face. Renzo, what's wrong? Are you not happy? He blinked out of his daze, frowned slightly, then said stiffly, well, you're the one who refused to use protection all this time. Now you're pregnant. What do you expect me to do? His face twisted like he'd just swallowed something bitter. But then he seemed to remember his script. He forced a softer expression. It's a good thing. Since you're pregnant, we'll keep the baby. I studied him. Then, what about the wedding? We'll move it up, he said immediately. Next month. I want everyone, especially Grandpa, to know you're having my child. Blushing, I leaned into him, acting bashful. Renzo, you're so good to me. Just out of my view, Rocco's fists clenched at his sides. That night, Renzo didn't come to my room. He claimed that since I was pregnant now, the first 3 months were critical. We should sleep in separate rooms for safety. Barely 15 minutes after I got into bed, I got a notification from my surveillance system. I tapped it open. The screen lit up with footage from the guest room on the first floor. There was Renzo, pinning Sierra against the wall, kissing her like his life depended on it. He had a thing about cleanliness. He hated hotels. And that guest room? It was Sierra's personal space. Her hands were tangled in his hair, her voice breathy. Didn't you say you only cared about the baby? That you weren't actually going to marry her? Renzo's jaw clenched. I need to keep her calm first, Sierra scoffed. If Susie finds out you set up your brother to sleep with her and that the baby is actually his, she'll never forgive you. He buried his face in her chest. She's never gonna find out. Sierra raised an eyebrow, unamused. That Project Shoreline, your brother sabotaged you, right? Honestly, it seems like he really likes Susie. That's bullshit. Renzo snapped. There's no way he actually likes her. He just thinks she's new and exciting.
She didn't buy it.
We'll see. I'm telling you, the way he looks at her isn't casual. You're using her pregnancy to win Grandpa's favor and secure the inheritance. But if this blows up in your face, you'll lose everything. Shut up. Watching all of this from my bed, I didn't hesitate. I saved the footage immediately.
Yep.
That bald guy I met at the tea house? I'd bought spy cams from him. And I didn't just install them in the guest room. I put them in the study too and a few other places just in case. Also, I'm not actually pregnant. I ordered birth control pills online and hid them in a vitamin C bottle. Every time Renzo and I slept together, I took one right after. The next day, Renzo went all out. He hired 18 nutritionists to design rotating prenatal menus just for me. I tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "Isn't this a bit much?" He replied seriously, "No, it's necessary. Later, the family doctor will come by and do a full checkup to confirm you're really pregnant."
What?
I froze on the spot. Right on cue, the butler walked in with a man in a white coat. "Sir, Dr. Applebaum is here."
Shit.
I'd prepared for him dragging me to the hospital. I even had a pregnant friend ready to pee in a cup for me. But I never imagined he'd bring the doctor here. What now? I'm going to be exposed. My stomach flipped as I watched the doctor pull out all kinds of equipment for the checkup. I was already trying to figure out how I was going to lie my way out of this once the test results came back. Just then, Rocco came downstairs, dressed in loungewear. I glanced up at him, but he didn't even look at me. He just walked past and stood on the far side of the living room. "Doctor, what's the result? Is Susie really pregnant?" Renzo asked, sounding tense. "Let me see," the doctor replied, adjusting his glasses as he looked over the report. I swallowed hard. My hands were clammy with sweat.
Yes.
"She is indeed pregnant," the doctor confirmed. I jerked my head up, staring in shock. "That's amazing news." Renzo broke into a relieved smile and personally walked the doctor out. The room went quiet. Now it was just me and Rocco. I glanced at him suspiciously. He shrugged, picked up his glass of water, and calmly walked back upstairs. Time flew, and before I knew it, it was my wedding day. The hotel was packed, socialites, CEOs, influencers, every big name in the country. Outside looked like a luxury car expo. Reporters crowded around with giant cameras, waiting to capture the bride's grand entrance. But I didn't show. A few awkward moments passed, and then, bam, All the lights cut out. A second later, the massive screen behind the altar lit up. People turned to look. What they saw made the whole room fall into a stunned silence. It was Renzo, in bed with another woman. Their voices echoed through the hall, clear as day. If Susie finds out you set up your brother to sleep with her, and that the baby in her belly is actually his, she'll never forgive you. She's never gonna find out. Gasps erupted. Wait, the baby's Rocco's. Renzo set his own brother up? That's insane. Wow, he couldn't compete, so he played dirty? What a snake. The room exploded in murmurs. Every eye locked on Renzo. Grandpa, who had cleared his schedule to attend, looked absolutely livid. You little bastard, he snapped. Then came a sharp smack, a slap across Renzo's face that echoed like thunder. You really thought you could fool me? You think I'm too old and blind to see through your garbage? No, Grandpa, it's not like that. Renzo tried to grab his sleeve, but the old man shook him off, his face carved from stone. Humiliated, he turned and stormed out, bodyguards in tow. Before he left, Rocco stepped forward, wine glass in hand. Don't worry, Gramp. I'll handle it. Grandpa gave him a look, nodded slightly, then left without another word. As soon as he was gone, Renzo snapped. He grabbed Rocco by the collar. Where's Susie? What did you do to her? Are you two in this together? Rocco shoved him back and dragged him into the lounge behind the hall. Bodyguards formed a wall, blocking the press from getting close. Inside, Rocco didn't waste time. He slammed his fist straight into Renzo's gut. That's for what you did to Susie last time. Then came another punch, and another. Renzo dropped, groaning on the floor, arms clutching his stomach. Sierra rushed in, panicked, dropping to her knees to help him. But her parents stormed in right after and yanked her up. Are you out of your mind? Her mother shouted. We raised you better than this. If you want a man, at least pick one decent. You really threw yourself at a guy who doesn't even want you. Renzo struggled to his feet, staring at his brother like he was seeing him for the first time. You've been into my girlfriend this whole time, haven't you? But Rocco didn't answer. Instead, a memory came flooding back. He was in his sophomore year when the accident happened. I was 16, clutching my pencil case, rushing down the street. My heart pounded. The exam I had suddenly meant nothing. There was smoke in the sky. A car flipped on its side, wheels still spinning. A boy lay inside, blood pooling beneath shattered glass. I dropped to my knees, pressed my hands to his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. I didn't leave until the paramedics pulled him away. Years later, when I transferred to that elite photography school, I had no idea that boy would turn out to be my boyfriend's brother. And when Dr. Applebaum confirmed I was pregnant that day, everything made sense. Rocco had been reborn. And this whole time, he had been quietly helping me take my revenge. That very night, I went straight to him and told him everything. I'll help you become the heir, I said, but you have to get me out of Connecticut. He looked at me for a long moment, then asked softly, so you knew about everything between us? I nodded. Yeah, I knew. He looked stunned at first. Then slowly, he exhaled. A quiet smile tugged at the corner of his lips, like part of him had known all along. Then, can I come find you? One day. I smiled back, gave a little shrug. We'll see. An hour before the wedding was set to begin, I boarded a private jet bound for Boston. No flight log. No boarding pass. No trail Renzo could trace. Not long after, over coffee with my best friend, I heard the news. Rocco had taken control of PWL Corp. Renzo had been completely pushed out. The fallout from the wedding scandal broke him. He stopped chasing the inheritance and started chasing me instead. As for Sierra, her reputation crumbled. She tried forcing Renzo to marry her. Things got ugly. They fought. She fell down the stairs and ended up in a coma. That same day, Renzo was arrested for intentional assault. Sentenced to 10 years. 3 years passed in a blink. I was in Dorchester, camera slung over my shoulder, chasing the golden light along brick alleys and neon signs. I stepped into the street, framing a shot, when I bumped into someone tall in a sharp suit. Susie. A voice said, low and steady. Long time no see. That scent, bitter orange, wrapped around me before I even looked up. My breath caught. Those eyes still deep, still blue, still intoxicating. Like the universe had pressed play on something unfinished. Babe, I breathed. And just like that, it felt like Rocco and I were picking up where we left off in another life.